Well, hey, welcome to a Valid Answer Monday edition with Scott and Marshall. I have to produce our own show, so I have to put up all of our own stuff. So there's our names. There we go. We got Marshall, the
liberal atheist,
socialist,
socialist liberal atheist.
That's right.
And over here we got Scott, who is the capitalist, conservative pastor,
yes,
if you will. All right, so welcome to our show. This is our Monday edition. We had a fantastic edition last night. We actually talked about UFOs. I dropped some pretty incredible knowledge. The show gets better as you go on.
He's really bragging about himself here, yeah.
If you missed last night's show, I encourage you to look it up. It's on UFOs, especially after about the 20-minute mark. It starts to get really, really good because there's a lot of cool stuff out there that a lot of people have missed.
Yeah.
So that's a great show to watch. But also we have all kinds of shows archived on A Valid Answer.
Yeah, we're getting close to like 40 shows already or more.
I know, we're right there. Yeah. We're right there. And we've been going for almost a full year. We also have on iTunes podcasts. Is it iTunes or is it Apple Podcasts?
It's iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whichever one. But just find the podcast, and you can get iTunes podcasts on a PC or whatever. You can get podcasts on there. But yeah, we got all of our episodes going on there and starting a Monday show. So if you're just seeing us, this is only the second time you've seen us on a Monday. This is only the second time we've been on a Monday, but we've been going for almost a year on Sunday nights. So now we're continuing here, and who knows what's going to happen next.
And I don't think we've ever repeated a topic. Isn't that crazy?
There's so much out there. We have done like a part 1 or a part 2, or we have gone back to kind of elaborate on it, but there's just so much to talk about. You can go back there. We've talked about guns, immigration. If you look back at that one, we actually took him to a shooting range and he shot an assault weapon for the first time.
And loud.
Oh,
I'm
my
kidding.
gosh.
I had a great time.
Yeah, he had a great time. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. What are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to talk about high-speed rail. And
one of the evil high-speed rail.
Oh, I think it's great. We got to build it, even if it just goes in a circle. The cool thing about a valid answer,
at least a circle would actually possibly do something instead of going from 2 points that nobody wants to go to.
From one side of Fresno to the other?
Yeah.
The cool thing about a valid answer is that Scott and I like to talk about current and trending topics, but we don't talk so much about the people and the personalities. We talk more about the ideas behind the projects.
Because the people and the personalities,
and
that's
the philosophy.
It's surface. It's shallow.
Right. And we call each other out when we make, logical fallacies and stuff. So you're going to get another level of discussion here that you don't normally get on talk radio shows and stuff like that. That's not to say that what the talk radio hosts out there are doing isn't great, because it's fantastic discussion. But here you're going to get a slightly different flavor.
You're going to get some conflict.
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't always, and this is going to be one of those topics too, because
I can feel it myself.
I don't think I share the same fervor for high speed rail that you seem to have.
I'm looking forward to riding it.
Which literally, that's the only thing apparently is like, and we got to spend billions and billions of dollars because I just want to ride it one day. That's right. Totally not a good enough reason.
No, I do confess. I agree. You're correct on that count. But yes, I do think, to get into the topic, we need to finish the high speed rail project. Now, it's
no matter what it costs.
Obviously, it can't cost infinite money, but I don't think it's going to cost. I don't know what the projections are. As I recall,
started at $40 million.
40 million or billion?
Billion, excuse me. It started at $40 billion.
And I keep thinking like 22 billion initially or something, but 40 billion.
It was $40 billion. There was an initiative in 2007 or 2008, I think.
And we passed it.
That we passed it. That it was an initial bond for a $10 billion down payment on a $40 billion total project from San Francisco to Los Angeles.
And then wasn't there the promise of federal matching funds or something?
Something like that, yeah. There's a federal grant coming in, some of that. It has ballooned now to where it's about $77 billion projected, with it growing to somewhere over $100 billion. It has been postponed multiple times. Right now, we're looking at it being possibly 2 to 3 times as expensive as it was originally projected, and more than likely being 40 plus years from first payment to actual riders from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
40 years, huh?
They're projecting right now, it has moved, but they're projecting right now to be done in 2033, which that has moved. You can bet that it's going to move again. It's going
2033?
2033.
for San Francisco to LA.
Yes.
I don't think that's that bad.
That's.
I mean, to me, that's a little earlier than I actually thought in my
I'm
mind.
I'm honestly
because they've got to
expecting
go through the mountains.
Yeah, I'm honestly expecting 2050. I'm expecting that to go. So when that happens, that when they open and it started and the project started and was developed in 2007, that means by the time it's actually running, it's 45-year-old technology already. It took them that long to already do it.
45-year-old technology. No, the trains and the technology will constantly be updated. It's like saying that it takes 10 years or 50 years to build an airport. We're not flying airplanes from 50 years ago. The trains will be.
No,
updated.
we literally are. You don't know how the planes are developed? Like when the
Really?
Yes. No, I'm serious. No. The first flying prototype of the F-35 Lightning II, that the new plane.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the first flying prototype of that was in the late 90s.
Okay.
And they were already developing that. So by the time it's built 30 years later, it's already based on technology that was barely developed 30 years ago.
And yet it's the world's most advanced fighter plane.
Yeah.
In existence.
It just takes
it
that
does,
long.
and it does take
And by the time
time.
you're done, then you just got to do it again.
But the train technology is going to be, I think it's going to be pretty good. It's great now. You have high-speed rail being implemented successfully around the world.
And I'm going to talk about
Europe,
that too.
Japan, China, literally hundreds of millions of people riding on these rail systems. And
there's a reason why that's comparable. That's the reason why those are comparable to each other and not comparable at all to the United States.
Well, the United States, we really don't have high-speed rail. We have the Acela corridor, or whatever it's called, in the Northeast. And I think that connects like Philadelphia down to Washington, D.C. or Baltimore maybe. And that's relative high speed. I think it runs about 100 and 110 miles an hour.
That's what this will be running.
Sections. Well, that's when it's slow, or up to 220 miles an hour in the open sections. The high-speed rail project will be sharing.
What is that? What is that
tracks,
comparative? What is that comparative to?
And on the shared track, it'll be running at 110.
And what is that comparative to? Is that what they're running in China? Is that what they're running in Japan?
I don't know actually what the actual speeds are. I imagine they're very high, but I honestly don't know, and it probably depends on the individual line.
So all China, Japan, and Europe are actually all comparable to each other, and that's why those work there. But none of those are actually comparable to not just the economy, but to the mindset and to the current operations of the way people travel in the United States. Those countries didn't have a culture of cars. They didn't have the roadways the United States have. So when high-speed rail came to those countries, it was the only way to travel, and that's why it's so successful over there, because there was fewer options, because people didn't have cars like we have in America. You're expecting high-speed rail to come here and suddenly, okay, now we're going to get rid of cars off the road and everybody's going to ride the train, and that's not the culture of the United States. You're going to spend all of this money to build this high-speed rail that very few people are actually going to use, because we already have this independent culture of our own cars, of where we want to go, when we want to go, that did not exist previously to high-speed rail in all those other countries that you're talking about. There was not already a culture of my own car. I go where I want to go, when I want to go, and that's a uniquely American culture, because of the landscape, because of how much room we have, and how we've developed all of our highways and everything like that. That it's one of those things. It's not comparable. You're going to spend all this money to expect the results that's happening in Europe, but the culture, I don't believe, is going to support it, and it's a big waste of money.
Well, I think if you look at the medieval cities of Europe, which many of the cities are still medieval, many of them still have their medieval urban road networks, which are actually very narrow, and it's very hard even to get around in a car.
Yes.
And as a consequence, people find it more practical to use mass transit systems.
But that doesn't exist in the United States. That's not a problem.
Right.
You're developing a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, and that's why I think the solution is going to be a flop. You're right. You're creating another Transformers movie, thinking that everybody still wants a Transformers movie, and you're spending $200 million making a Transformers movie, thinking that's what people still want, and it comes out and it still flops.
Well, here's the thing: high-speed rail is going to take quite a few cars off the road. Other countries with high-speed rail systems service 1.6 billion passengers from here. Now, this is from California's own high-speed rail project. Amtrak's California corridors are amongst the busiest in the nation. There's already 5.7 million Californians riding the train, and that's just last year. I myself am going to ride the train here in a few weeks. I'm going to be taking a trip up to the Bay Area, and again, I'll be going on the train. So high-speed rail is going to connect 6 of the 10 largest cities in the state. It's going to have ridership in the millions. And in fact, I think it will probably blow out all expectations once it's actually built.
I believe that those are expectations that will not be met.
Oh, I think they will be met, because think about this.
Did that happen when commercial airline?
Well, a commercial airline ticket costs a heck of a lot more than a train ticket's going to cost. Mm-hmm. A train ticket is going to be a fraction of an airline ticket. In fact, a lot of people are going to go from airports to trains, because now all of a sudden, yes, it will be a longer trip in terms of time, but the affordability is much, much greater. So when you do the trade-off, it's worth the time actually to save the money and ride the train. So I think people are going to be doing that. It's going to take a lot of cars off the road. It's going to save us a lot of emissions.
It's only going to replace planes.
It's going to save us tremendous
It's not going to take cars off the road. It's going to take, if it does anything, it might lower air travel, but it's not going to replace cars.
Well, actually, no. I mean, they argue that it's going to actually decrease emissions, saying here that they expect to save approximately 1,800 tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually.
Okay, which China puts out in one day, so big whoop.
Okay, and they're also
that's a big difference that we're making in the world. I mean, that's whoa. We're gonna do all this stuff and spend all this money, do all this stuff to do a fraction of a percentage of a dent to what's going on in the rest of the world.
No, I don't think so. I think it's the ridership, the actual ridership, once it's fully built out, will actually exceed all expectations. I personally believe that. And the reason for that is economic, which is, what do you think is going to happen when people who live in urban areas, particularly Los Angeles and the Bay Area in particular, where the cost of housing is virtually unaffordable, you can't afford it, period. Right. What happens when you now have access to much cheaper housing options in the Central Valley? What do you think is going to happen? There's going to be a massive exodus of people from these urban areas into the Central Valley looking for cheap housing. They're going to resettle there and use those as bedroom communities. Mm-hmm. So today, a person wakes up in our hometown of Bakersfield, drives 2 hours to Los Angeles, goes to work, and then drives 2 hours back. That's actually somewhat common now. And it became common starting in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And
when you say common, when you say common, it's not actually common.
Well, it's
done.
It's done. Okay. Yeah. And so what's going to happen is that will actually really be commonplace when we have the high-speed rail in place. And people travel 30 minutes now to work, which people here in town already travel 30 minutes just to get across town. Now imagine that same 30 or 45 minutes, and now you're getting to Los Angeles.
Right, but
so a lot of people are going to come here for the affordable housing.
Do you think you're going to be going 200 miles an hour from here to Los Angeles? Through the mountains?
I don't know how it's going to work.
Through the mountains?
I mean, I don't even know. I believe actually the engineering will probably take it up over San Bernardino, out that way, and then back in. But it is possible they could eventually pioneer a route over the Grapevine, going directly south, and it would probably be a faster route. Yes, it would not be super fast. It's not going to be probably 200-something miles an hour. But so
it's about an hour.
It might be. But even then, it's still a lot faster and cheaper than driving your car.
Not cheaper than driving your car. They're talking $90 a ticket.
Well, when you start getting into the ridership that's going to be on it, I think the ticket prices will actually decline.
Josh Gunderson says, I think it will reduce congestion on the freeways. What congestion the only thing it's going to reduce is the long road from Los Angeles to San Francisco. That's not where we have freeway congestion. We have freeway congestion in the cities. This isn't going to do anything for traffic in the cities.
We have a lot of congestion between here and Sacramento and the Bay Area. Yeah, absolutely.
When there's construction, maybe.
But even when there's not, you're still looking at 2 lanes throughout, up and down.
But you're still traveling full speed. Only that, most of the time, 70, 80 miles an hour. There isn't. That's not where the congestion is. The congestion is in the cities, and we're not going to reduce any of that with this. We might even. I don't think they'll have any effect on there. Because that's happening. That's still happening within the cities. People are living in those cities. All that traffic congestion is there. What traffic congestion are you alleviating between San Francisco and Los Angeles?
Well, all the people who normally have to drive that distance, which I think is about a 7-hour drive by car, will no longer have to make that drive by car, and they can complete that drive now in 3 hours on a train.
They're relatively speaking, there's not that many comparatively because they're taking flights. That's what I'm saying. You're going to affect flights. You're going to affect air travel more than you're going to affect automobile travel.
I think the mistake in your logic here is you're assuming that it's the same number of people. Once the train comes available, more people are going to make that commute because now it becomes feasible. Right now, it's not feasible. And if you can't afford the plane ticket and you can't afford the 7-hour drive, there's really not an option. Once the high-speed rail comes in as a middle option,
you have one track.
Then I think you're going to open up to a lot of other people. There'll probably be multiple tracks.
Well, it's probably 2 tracks, one in each direction. But still, this whole thing is building one lane.
Okay, but even if it's one track, and it may actually very well be more than one track, but even at one track,
it's
you can
likely
line
2
up
tracks.
trains.
It's likely 2 tracks.
And you can have more than one train on the same track at the same time, moving in the same direction.
How many? I mean, what? It's not like air flight.
I don't know what the minimum distance is between high-speed rail trains. I am certain there's actually a figure for that, a calculus behind it, but you can pack a certain number of trains on a single segment of high-speed rail. And then when the train has to stop, it pulls over to a siding. It's routed onto a siding, and other trains can pass through. And so you can actually fit a good number of trains, and then you would go to a multi-track system within urban areas.
How many of it
has to turn off?
When we compare it to other countries, when we compare it to especially China and Japan, aren't those aren't rail, right? China and Japan, they're running maglev.
Well, but they're on rails. Okay,
but they don't. They're running. What I'm saying is that they're not running on current track. They're running.
Well, these will be electric tracks. These will be electrified.
But you're saying that these will have the limitation on this high speed rail will be limited, that it still has to be able to operate on current existing track when it gets to that position. So there is that limitation.
What does that limitation work out to? What are you saying?
I'm saying it can't be as efficient. Again, we're comparing to this great rail system in all these other countries, but they're doing technology that we're not implementing here. They're alleviating problems that we don't have here. So the comparison on a technological level, on a social level, on all of that is not an equal comparison. Every time you point back to any of the other countries that are doing it, it's not an equal comparison. We're not going to get the same results that they got because it's not an equal comparison.
Regardless of the technology that's being deployed, when the speeds are comparable and the ridership is comparable, I mean, ultimately, if the speeds are comparable, really, I don't think people really care exactly what technology is being used. I don't even think they would care if it were diesel powered. Now, I care. I want it to be sustainably powered, and I want it to be clean. I want it to be a cleaner, cheaper, safer alternative to driving on the freeway, which it is. And at that point, whether we're powering it with a pantograph, which is a little thing that goes up and gives you the electric power and turns the wheels, or you're doing it with maglev, which is you're using electromagnets or whatever. I don't think the actual technical difference is that significant.
Well, the technical difference is how fast the train can go and what it has to be compatible with. The more it has to be compatible with current structures, the less efficient it can be.
So how fast do the trains go in China?
I was under the impression that they're consistently over 200 miles per hour, close to 300 miles per hour on maglev.
Well, in this case, they're saying that in other areas, they're saying in blended shared corridors, trains will be slowed to 110 miles an hour as required by regulations. So that's actually a legal limitation, not a technical limitation. However, in other areas, speeds will top 220 miles an hour. So when the train is on its own dedicated track, it'll be able to accelerate to 220 miles an hour. Now, when we get into the 2030s, which is another 20 years from now, and we're looking at new technologies, it may be very possible that we'll be traveling even faster. But right now, the current plan is speeds around 220 miles an hour.
Josh earlier said, our trains suck currently and folks still take them. Why would that not increase with better service?
Precisely.
But I'm saying our trains are not sustainable already. Our train system is not sustainable. Amtrak has to get subsidies all the time from the government. It's not sustainable on its own.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, because they're saying basically, it says here, providing the same capacity as high-speed rail from San Francisco to Los Angeles would require 4,300 new highway lane miles, probably 2 or 3 new lanes on each of the 5 and the 99, I'm guessing. 115 additional airport gates, which I have no idea how we would implement that.
Right.
I guess you'd have to make LAX 3 stories. 4 new airport runways, costing more than $158 billion with a 50-year maintenance of more than $132 billion. Now, you're saying if high-speed rail is going to cost around $80 billion, well, that's actually the cheaper alternative.
Over $100 billion.
Even over 100, it's still better than $158 billion with the 50-year maintenance cost of $132 billion.
Right, but
so high-speed rail is actually the cheaper option.
Hold on. No, but you're comparing what you would have to do with all this and adding the, what is it, 50-year maintenance?
Right.
What's the 50-year maintenance of the high-speed rail that you're not adding into that equation?
Well, what is it?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. They're comparing. Here's the $100 billion cost compared to this $120 billion plus 50 years of maintenance. Well, why don't you tell us what the 50 years of maintenance for the high-speed rail is, and then you're actually comparing apples to apples.
Well, if we eliminate the maintenance,
that's a straw man argument right there.
No,
that's an actual straw man argument because they're not comparing the same things. They're comparing the cost of this to the cost and maintenance of that.
Okay, but if we eliminate because there's 2 figures here. If we remove the maintenance cost just to be apples to apples, we're looking at $158 billion. So that's the new infrastructure estimate. So if we're going to build, more runways, more gates, more highway lanes,
that will be used by more people.
$158 billion. Not necessarily. No, I think the trade-off here is that the people would not be flying and they would not be driving; they'd be riding the train. So obviously,
I don't think you have an accurate understanding of the culture of America and cars.
Well, I think people just want to get where they want to go safely and efficiently and cheaply. And I think that's true whether you're Chinese or Japanese or European. And I think that's also the same for American. And I am okay with leaving the car at home, which is why in a few weeks, I'm literally going to ride the really slow Amtrak train to get to where I'm going, because I would literally rather ride the train than drive in a car. I would rather
drive the car and be wherever I want, whenever I want.
Well, I understand that, but I'm okay with.
You're okay with giving up your independence. I know that's what progressives do.
How am I giving up my independence?
You're giving up. You don't get to decide where you're going, when you're going, or what time you're going to be there.
Yes, I did. I got to choose what time my departure is, as well as what time.
And now it can't change. That's what I'm saying. You're willing to give up your independence.
I'm willing to make what I feel is a reasonable trade-off. I'm not exactly, selling myself into some kind of slavery or something, or indentured servitude.
Josh is making a great point that truthfully, we will probably still have to make those additional infrastructure improvements anyway.
Well, maybe so, but I think
now the cost is just simply doubling.
Well, and that may be the case too, but if our economy can handle it and if our population requires it,
because our economy can certainly handle that.
So is your primary objection to this cost?
No.
Is it dollars and cents?
It's mostly that it's a waste, that it's a misunderstanding of how Americans
travel. How is it going to be wasted if it's put into use? If we use it, is it wasted?
Yeah. I mean, I can spend $500 on a pair of shoes, or I could spend $20 on a pair of shoes. I use them both the same. I wasted a bunch of money if I spent $500 on shoes.
Okay, but not everybody can afford cars. You have to take a look at some of these cities like Los Angeles and in San Francisco. A lot of people there do not have cars. This train is going to provide them with an outlet to actually leave the city without having to try to rent a car or borrow a car or no car at all. So all of a sudden, we're literally opening up these cities so the people in there can get out. And again, I think a lot of them will come and resettle in the Central Valley, which I think gets to...
Yeah, they're going to pack up their whole car on that train. They're going to pack up their whole house on that train and move.
Well, take a look at the size of the house in San Francisco. I mean, there are people who are literally it's only a few hundred square feet. And that's where they live.
So it's a one-time move. That's a great efficient use of you're making the argument that there's going to be somebody who's going to make that one-time move from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
I think a lot of people are going to make the move, which is why I think this is actually
which doesn't eliminate anything, because they still have to have a truck that brings all of their stuff. It won't go on the train.
Okay, so it's a futon,
it didn't save anything. It didn't save anything.
A dresser or a shift-robe or
anything.
Something. Big deal.
You didn't save anything.
No,
it didn't accomplish anything. There still had to be a vehicle that drove on the road to get there.
Okay, one time. But now,
again, you're still talking about a one-time move.
In new homes in a cheaper area, they can then ride the train. Take a look at the BART system. The BART system has
local.
done exactly. But
that's local.
That's still a rail system.
Yeah,
and it's allowed people to leave San Francisco and settle in the surrounding communities. Now imagine the BART system on steroids, which is high-speed rail.
But the BART system, you're
spread out even further.
You're looking at a BART system that goes like this to communities. We're talking one train. That's not going to solve the problem you're talking about. You're talking one line.
Correct.
Taking 40 years and over $100 billion to make one line.
But that one line can also branch off over time. You can build connections to that line, which is how all railroads work. So I don't think that's a big issue. The Transcontinental Railroad was not just one line. It was one line, one main line with many spurs going off in many different directions.
Josh, you're right on that. It would be surprised how it feels to be car-free in a city. I understand that. But again, you're talking about in the city. We're not talking about the high-speed rail is not solving what's happening in the city. The only thing it's solving is what's happening between the cities.
How is it not solving what's happening in the city? Because I see it solving what's happening in the city. It gets people out of the city so that they can live in a cheaper community and they can commute in for work and then return home to their community.
But this isn't a metro line. This is a high speed. The only reason it's high speed is that it's nonstop. It's going from Los Angeles to San Francisco, maybe a few stops here and there, but it's not stopping for full unload, full offload. All that it takes away the time. It takes away everything that you're talking about. This is a line, not a metro multi-stop bus stop. Stop here, 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 stop. That's not what this is.
Right, but again,
there
will be multiple trains.
People are not going
line.
To commute on this train from Bakersfield to San Francisco.
Absolutely, they will. That is
they're not going
exactly.
They're not going to do an everyday commute from Bakersfield to San Francisco.
I bet you they do. I mean, I literally see that as the value of this system.
That's what happens in Europe. Somebody gets on a train in France and goes to work in Germany.
Well, I don't know.
Which is the equivalent distance.
But yes, that's what they do. They get in the train in one area and then they ride to, let's say, Paris or wherever, the big city, do their work, and then they go home on the train. Or they also travel. And they go from place to place. Look at
daily commute on
Absolutely.
there. That's what happens in there.
It's what happens in the Northeast Corridor. That's precisely what all the people riding the Acela Express are doing. It's what happens in places like up around Washington where people are riding their faster trains. I don't know if they're regarded as high-speed rail. Mm-hmm. They're certainly not bullet trains. But they absolutely commute to work on the train every single day.
Yeah, but that's local.
No, there's nothing local about Baltimore to Philadelphia. That's probably at least a few hundred miles, but they're riding these trains exactly for that purpose. They're doing it for work. These are not tourist trains. This is not just
Which is
tourists.
What you're doing.
That's what I happen to be doing, which I could never ride the Amtrak every day back and forth. It's a 6-hour trip from here to San Francisco. That is absolutely impractical. But could I do 1 hour or an hour and a half maybe? Absolutely. No problem.
It doesn't extend the freedom argument, Josh. It's not the range, it's the choice. That's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. The car gives you the choice.
Yeah, the car does give you some freedom.
The car gives you independence.
But I think a good mass transit system and your two legs, I think also gives you a lot of freedom and independence. Sometimes a car takes away your freedom and independence in that it costs you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of regulations. You have to pay to park it, especially in San Francisco, which is why I'm not taking a car. It's going to cost a whole lot of money. It's going to tie me to a parking space. It will be very difficult to find another parking space, especially over the holidays. Mm-hmm. And I don't see it as an increase in freedom. I see it as an increase in stress. So I'm choosing to be free from the stress, free from the expense of having to park a car. And now I feel more free because I'm on foot and I can use the mass transit system to get to where I want to go. San Francisco's pretty good about that. They have a decent mass transit system. Mm-hmm. There's going to be mass transit systems.
Just watch your step for all the poop and urine everywhere.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with high-speed rail. So I think there is a real reason why Democrats are pushing this and why Republicans are resisting.
Tell me your conspiracy theory.
I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, but I only have logic to back it up. But I think when you hear the logic, you're probably going to agree. And I think people on both sides are going to find something to take away. And it's this. You don't hear this discussed at all. When the high-speed rail is built, there will be a mass exodus from these blue Democrat enclaves, San Francisco, Los Angeles, to the Central Valley, which is a Republican stronghold. Mm-hmm. What do you think happens to the Republican stronghold when all the Democrats come out of the city and settle in the valley?
I believe people
will kill the Republican Party.
No.
Which is why the Democrats probably are pushing for it and the Republicans are resisting it.
No.
Doesn't it make
that?
Why wouldn't you see that?
Where has that happened?
Well, it hasn't happened, but it's gonna.
Where has that happened with all this high-speed rail and all these things? Where has that happened?
It hasn't because we don't have high-speed rail.
Okay, with all these other examples, you said where it's working.
California is kind of unique. It's its own thing where we have a conservative Central Valley, right?
No.
And we have cities
it's not unique at all. When you look at the United States mm-hmm. and you break it up by county, the United States is almost completely red with blue spots in the cities. That's not unique in California.
Okay, so what
that's
happens
everywhere.
when you take those blue spots and you spread it out?
Tell me what happened.
Keep in mind, land area doesn't vote.
Tell me what happened in the corridor. Tell me what happened in Washington.
Well, I don't know, but those are urban areas.
So they're local. So they're still local.
Massive metropolitan area that's strung together, but people still can shop and work from one place all the way to the other because they have a convenient means of transport. But
so
here in the Central Valley, this is different.
Did it spread the blue?
Well, understand this. Understand that all those red areas that you see on the map, mm-hmm. that's land area, and land area does not vote.
Right, but people.
So
still
you can
live
have
there.
Wyoming, which has a population in the tens or maybe
that's why they're flyover states because nobody cares about them. They don't matter.
But all of Wyoming
they don't matter
is
to
this big
you.
red spot on the map because there's only a handful of people who are voting compared
and they don't matter.
to millions of people concentrated in cities. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when you take 10 million Democrats and you resettle them in the Central Valley? What happens when that happens? What
happens is that when they suddenly are no longer in little apartments, when they suddenly are homeowners, they become conservative. You're going to spread.
That might happen. That might happen.
They concentrate in these small areas. They concentrate mm-hmm. in cities because there's a lot of like-mindedness there. When they come out of that, mm-hmm. when they become homeowners, when they become responsible people. Mm-hmm.
Assuming homes are still affordable.
Yeah.
And they're actually able to access.
Hold on, that's your whole argument. That's your whole argument that they're moving to where mm-hmm. homes are affordable.
Well, there'll be cheaper rent for sure.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you want to be a homeowner when this thing gets built. You want to be a business owner when this thing gets built because it means more business, more people, more business means more profits. Mm-hmm. Personally, at first, I couldn't figure out why Republicans would be so opposed to this. They don't certainly care about the environmental regulations. They certainly don't care about eminent domain. They've used eminent domain to do all sorts of things, mm-hmm. Just as Democrats have. So why would Republicans be opposed to this? There is the fossil fuel side.
Because it's a big waste of money that takes away independence.
But Republicans constantly blow money if it's profitable to them. Republican legislatures and Republican presidents consistently rack up the deficit and rack up the spending just as much as Democrats do.
About half as much as Democrats do, but okay.
Well, I don't know about that, but
compare Trump to Obama.
They don't. Their objection to government spending is
when it's wasteful.
But they waste money all the time. Republicans are just as guilty of wasting money as Democrats are. Okay, so why the opposition is something that most Republicans, who many business owners are conservative, mm-hmm. right? So why would business owners get on board to oppose something that would bring them more business in the long run? And I think my hypothesis is the reason. It will kill the Republican Party once and for all in California, which is why Democrats would want it.
No, if that were the reason, you'd be hearing that.
Maybe people aren't plugged into that, or maybe people simply aren't talking about it. I could be wrong. I could be a complete nut job. This is just my personal hypothesis. It could be more about the fossil fuels, and that Republicans find that that the fossil fuel industry is very powerful still, and it's the fossil fuel industry which is fueling opposition campaigns to this, and they found Republican influencers to side with them. And they're, convincing you with the whole fiscal responsibility thing.
Nah, to me, it's not. It's not just the fiscal responsibility thing. It's just the idea of all of this for something that's not bringing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Well, it's just putting money in the pockets of the people who are building it. which, by the way, are related to the government officials who are pushing this. It's just a money grab. It's a money grab in the tens of billions of dollars.
Okay, but conservatives do money grabs all the time. I mean, look at all the corporate welfare that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, corporate welfare actually exceeds social welfare. So, again, conservatives don't have an issue with money grabs. Now, libertarians and middle-class taxpayers have an issue with money grabs. And by the way, as a liberal and a socialist, I also have a problem with money grabs because I want my tax dollars
but you don't have
to
a
be
problem with
spent
this one.
responsibly. Because to me, it's an investment that will pay off. I will receive value
and I don't believe
for my
it'll
tax
pay
dollars
off.
because I'll be able to ride a train
I don't believe
and get
it'll
somewhere
pay off.
within a
So it's
reasonable amount of time.
I don't believe it's going to pay off. I think it's going to be a big flop, and that's why I'm against most money grabs, and I'm still against this one. You're against most money grabs unless it benefits you.
Isn't that everyone?
No.
I mean, most people are on board with something that benefits them.
No, because again, we've had this conversation before. Conservatives have principles, liberals don't.
What do you mean we don't have principles?
You don't have principles. You just showed right
so
now.
Now you're descending into ad hominems.
No, right.
And hasty generalization.
You just said right now you are against these things, but since it benefits you, you're for this one. That's not being principled.
Because
that's literally not being principled.
On principle, I support infrastructure projects because the common person receives value for it. I used because I'm putting myself into the high-speed rail equation. But in principle, I would support a high-speed rail project in the Midwest, which I think would be a great place to build a high-speed rail project, by the way.
But your principle of not blowing money, what was the phrase? We were saying that we're wasting money grabs. Mm-hmm. Your principle against money grabs, you're willing to violate that principle as long as there's a benefit.
Well, and also, how are we defining money grab? Look, if money is being used out of the public fund to build infrastructure projects that benefit the public, I'm all in favor of that. And that's what I believe high-speed rail is. You see it as what you call a boondoggle.
No, it's a boondoggle. It's a public money grab that wouldn't be happening if it was privately paid.
Well, it would be way more.
It'd be way more efficient. It'd be way more efficient.
It wouldn't be possible.
They're doing it in Texas. It's all completely business funded. They're building a high-speed rail in Texas.
So somehow it's going to work in Texas because it's private, but it won't work in California because
it won't
be
as wasteful. I still think it won't solve the problem that they're having. But if that's the choice that those private entities think that they can solve, and they're going to pour their own money into it, then then if it fails, it's on them. In California, it's all being supplied by our tax dollars, and if it fails, it's on us. That's why I'm saying it's a money grab. That's why I'm not against it. I'm not against high-speed rail because it's high-speed rail. I'm partially am because I don't think it's going to solve the problem that they're saying. But I'm saying here in California, uniquely, our tax dollars are paying for it, and it's not going to accomplish the fix that I don't believe it's going to accomplish the fix that they're saying, and it's a waste of tax dollars. Now, if in Texas, if they're successful and spend less money and do it over there with private funds, more power to them. They're privately doing that. They're taking care of, but it can be done. Just California's not doing it because it doesn't have to. California, the Democrats control the Democrats control all of government basically, and they can just choose to spend the people's money however the heck they want, however irresponsibly they want to, and I don't like that.
So you agree then from your statement that there is going to be an infrastructure challenge in the future, because California's population is projected to grow to more than 50 million by 2060. So you agree that
California's population is shrinking.
No,
California's population is shrinking right now.
Well, maybe
it's
right now,
shrinking
but
by
it's not going to continue
hundreds
to shrink.
of thousands of people a month.
And I don't have the data on that. Do you have data on that?
And stuff that I've read that because of the laws,
and I'll give you ground on that. That's fine.
That California's population is currently shrinking right now. And it's shrinking because of the choices of the politics that are happening. That people are leaving, businesses are leaving. It's not growing. California is not growing. So you're spending all of hundreds of billions of dollars of the people's money, $100 billion of the people's money on a problem that doesn't exist.
So how do you think we bring people back? Wouldn't it be build infrastructure? And what if we
reduce taxes?
What if we encounter an economic
reduce business
recession?
taxes? Make it easier for business to be here. Stop fighting against businesses. Stop making decisions that make it harder to have businesses here. That's how you can bring people back. Nobody cares if there's going to be, let's move our company over there and lose hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes because, hey, they got a new rail system. That's not going to bring people back.
Well, it will if, again, when you encounter things like an economic recession, Keynesian economic theory basically says you go ahead and deficit spend and you build infrastructure because the development of infrastructure then stimulates business. And then that gets money going. And then, of course, the economy reboots. So we are probably on the cusp of another recession. They're certainly predicting it within the next year or two. Wall Street, I think, is certainly worried about that. Now, President Trump negotiated some kind of a truce in the trade war with China. So we think that might stave things off by a few months, perhaps, maybe longer. But ultimately, the business cycle will contract. The same forces that cause the economy to expand will also bring about contraction. And we are pretty much due for a contraction at this point. So when that happens, you want projects like high-speed rail to put people to work, because that's what's going to reboot the economy, at least here in this state.
Well, we should be spending money on, because yes, Josh, there is an infrastructure challenge right now, but the infrastructure challenge is not between cities, it's inside the cities. We should be spending the money on developing and fixing roads and developing infrastructure within the cities.
Why not both?
Because we don't have the finances to do both, and that's not what's happening here. Why not make the
cities compete? I mean, if you build a high-speed rail connecting 6 of the most populated cities in California, now those cities have to compete to upgrade their own infrastructure on their own in order to attract people to move there and stay there. Why not have that?
I'm not sure that's where the money comes from individually. Why not get this money and put it to those cities instead of putting it to something that doesn't solve the problems that those cities currently have, and then say, hey, now we've done this, now you go solve the problems. We just spent all this money on something that doesn't solve any of your problems.
Well, I think it does solve problems, and I think it'll take a lot of cars off the road. I think it will give people a middle option between airfare and riding in a car. Certainly, I'm going to exercise that middle option at the end of December for a relatively slow ride. Now, imagine if I had a fast ride option available to me. You bet I would be to take it. And that's just for tourism. And you'll also see people riding it for work, which is not done right now. People don't ride the train for work. So,
I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, I'm certain it'll happen. Again, it happens in the Northwest. Why do you think these business people are building it in Texas, as you say? I'm not familiar at all with the project in Texas. But if private businesses are building a high-speed rail project in Texas, they obviously see value in it.
Right, and businesses have never made a wrong decision on building something that people want.
Well, I tell you, when it comes to railroads, you go as far back as, again, the Transcontinental Railroad. It's probably one of the most genius.
I noticed that's consistent. I noticed that's consistent. All of our arguments. You have to go back a couple hundred years in order for your argument to make sense and to win.
Well, 150 years. But again, it's because I have a background in history. I have a degree in history. And if you want to predict the future, one of the things you do is you look at the past, because the past you're going to find some kind of a parallel. And since humans are the same organism that we were,
but you're comparing technologies to the past. You literally said you're literally saying let's go back to a technology from 200 years ago.
But the impact of the technology is often the same. So even though it's a different technology, you're looking
It's not. It's the same technology. That's what I'm saying. You're going back 200 years. You're going back to technology that's 200 years old.
You're going back and you're saying, what happens when we find a way to move people from point A to point B more efficiently? And when you get that, whether it's high-speed rail, whether it's airplane, whether it's the automobile or the horse and buggy, whatever it may be, you see a similar response in people. But again, people react the same way to the same stimuli because we are the same organism that we were even thousands of years ago. So again, what we saw with the Transcontinental Railroad, what we saw with the automobile, what we saw with the airplane, we will now see with high-speed rail.
I think you're going to be sorely disappointed. And we will be tens or hundreds of billions of dollars gone of the people's money to see that disappointment.
Well, I still think it's cheaper than upgrading the airports and building 4,300 new miles of
but that's going to happen anyway.
Lanes.
That's not going away.
Well, I don't know. It might.
That's not going away.
It might. And again, there's other unknown factors. Look at self-driving cars. Self-driving cars could come along.
That's what I'm saying.
And create a solution.
Again, that's the solution. You're going back to a technology that's 200 years old to solve a current solution. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be the cars. It's going to be self-driving cars that do this. That's going to change everything to where you can get into your self-driving car when you want. Keep your independence. It can be electric. Fine. You're going to travel from here. When it gets there, it's going to charge. That's going to solve more problems than a stupid single lane from two cities going back and forth between two cities.
But for right now, we don't have that technology working.
It's
not worked out yet.
Yes.
It's a future technology.
It's happening right now.
We don't have reliable self-driving cars yet, nor do we have the
We will have reliable self-driving cars long before this rail is ever finished.
And if you are correct, the reward for that will be we will cancel the rail project, wherever it may be. We will probably freeze construction and
lost all of that money because nobody's thinking future. Everybody's thinking past. You're thinking 200-year-old technology instead of how can we solve this problem with something new.
But
that's what doesn't make sense.
But we can't bank on something that has not yet arrived.
It is here.
So it has to arrive before we can bank on it. And right now we cannot. No, it's not here. No, it's not here. Yeah. I don't have a self-driving car. Do you?
No, but okay. I doubt. No, honestly, I doubt my daughter, who's 7. Mm-hmm. I doubt she'll need a driver's license by the time she's 17.
Well, we'll see about that. I'm pretty skeptical.
As fast as that technology is happening, as everybody's behind it,
well, I hope you're
right. As fast as things change now.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I'm going to bet on the
and you're going to bet my money. Thank you very much. You're going to bet my money. Thank you very much. Too.
And I'm going to ride the train, and I'm going to have a great time.
Right. See, if I was going on vacation, I've thought about taking an Amtrak on vacation, but ultimately, in the end, it was still more expensive than driving my car. And I lost the freedom because again, I have to take my whole family.
Mm-hmm. Well,
see, I can fit my family of 5 in my car, and I can get there for this amount of gas. Doesn't matter how many people are in my car; it's cost me the same amount of gas. If I want to take those 5 people on a train, now I've multiplied the cost of the train ride times 5. Mm-hmm. So for me, for a family, for one person, I can see that, but for a family, that doesn't solve anything.
Right, but I want to provide you with the additional option of a high-speed rail. You know?
I'm not asking for it.
Okay, but
I'm not asking for it, but you're still going to pay for it with my money.
Just like you have the option of flying in an airplane, you have a variety of options.
But that's my money when I want to spend it. I don't want you to spend my
to choose the transportation tool that works for you.
You're not creating freedom. You're taking my money away and offering an option that I'm not asking for.
Well, we're going to put the option out there, even if you choose not to use it. It's your freedom to choose
with my money. Thank you very much. Well, this has been High Speed Rail. On a valid answer with a capitalist conservative pastor and a socialist liberal atheist. Join us each week, Sundays at 5 o'clock, Mondays at 4 o'clock, right here on kerncast.com, Facebook Kerncast. Right now, if you're just tuning in because you're getting ready for the Denise Gary Show, we are now here at 4 o'clock. Catch our show, watch it back there. Put your comments on there. You can see that we welcome the discussion. We bring that in. We love being here and love having this show. And we want you to participate. We want you to join us in the discussion. 5 o'clock on Sundays.
Tell me how I'm wrong.
Yes.
Tell everyone how Scott's wrong.
Everybody come on and tell me why, let Marshall know why I'm right, and then tell him all about why he's wrong. Because obviously that's the truth. That's always the truth.
Well, I don't know about that. Hey, stay tuned for Denise. She's going to be up in about 10 minutes, and we will catch you on Sunday.
All right. See you guys later.